Hello everyone, welcome. My name is Juliana. I am a registered therapeutic counselor and a quantum human design specialist and a seeker of knowledge and how ancient wisdom integrates with our current experience as human beings. Today I'm going to be talking about Gene Key 24, which is the gene key of invention, or the shadow side of that is addiction. So the shadow of addiction, when I talk about addiction, I often use the term attachment because addiction really comes from this attachment to an experience, whether it's physical or mental or emotional or spiritual for that matter. Richard Rudd, in his book about the gene keys, he says that this is the shadow that keeps mental health professionals like myself in business, right? People get attached to their ways of being, their nervous system responses, the thoughts in their minds, their feelings. It's not out of choice. We're not taught how to move through or release the attachments to these states that exist in our bodies. But this is really the shadow that keeps people stuck in their cycles, the cycles that we all have, that we're all stuck in, whether it's to a belief that we created when we were a child, or to an emotion. For myself, one of the emotions that I'm working of kind of unsticking myself from is overwhelm. Whenever there's something going on in my life and it starts to feel too much, I go, oh, I'm so overwhelmed. And yes, perhaps in that moment I am overwhelmed, but then I perpetuate it. I have an attachment to the experience of being overwhelmed, to the story that I create around being overwhelmed, and then it cycles into feeling like I have no energy, and then the story and that attachment continue to cycle round and round and round it goes. So these are really conditioned patterns of behavior that we most often pick up on or begin to implement when we're children. And we can have patterns of behavior that we implement later on in life as adults or teenagers. What these are is how I often explain these to people is we have all these neurotransmitters running through our brain and our body and our nervous system. And these patterns of thinking or behaviors, which we say we have an attachment to, right? Like me with my overwhelm, they're like superhighways. So they're like the Autobahn, the freeways that are going, and our body has fired those transmitters so many times that they just go along super fast, super quickly. There's no thought or even a millimeter of a split second. It's so fast. It's like a superhighway. When we start to make changes, it's like we see a new path and it's a grown over old trail. And we have to take a machete and start cutting through the growth so that we start taking a new path. Like if I want to move out of overwhelm, one of the ways that I need to support myself is bring that into my conscious awareness. I need to first notice that overwhelm, and then I create a new experience in my nervous system, my body, my mind, in order to move away from the overwhelm. This behavior or attachment to the thought process or the belief or the feeling, it starts to limit us, right? If I'm overwhelmed all the time, what do I get to do in my overwhelm? I get to be overwhelmed, and then anything that my heart or my soul really wants to do, I'm in overwhelm while I'm doing it. So it's not very fun. And it's probably a lot more difficult than it needs to be, right? So that can really limit me if I allow that overwhelm to continue. What happens in this shadow of this gene key is that it's like there's this sudden shift. We all kind of experience it. We're feeling something, we're going along through life, and we're telling stories, we're talking, we are engaging, we are working, we have chores, we have kids, we have gardens, we have whatever it is that we have to do. And then suddenly, feels like out of nowhere, there's nothing. There's a gap. There's this silence. There's this void. And so what do you do when that gap arises? What do you do when suddenly you're in this space and there's nothing? The way we perpetuate our attachments is that when the gap arises, right? When I notice, for example, my overwhelm and I'm like, whoa, hang on, I have a choice here. That gap can feel really uncomfortable. And so then what we do is we either numb out in that place. I'm overwhelmed. I'm going to go overwork. I'm going to go drink wine. I'm going to go smoke something to help me calm down, right? We numb out so we don't feel that gap. We don't feel that space. Or we become anxious and we start doing, whether it's we're picking up our phone, we start focusing on other people and what they're doing. So this is how we perpetuate these attachments that we have. We have this attachment, we're going along, there's my overwhelm, and then suddenly there's a break. And these happen very spontaneously, very naturally. Suddenly there's just a gap in myself. That is where the choice lies. That's where we slowly start to notice, where's the gap, where's the void, and now what do I want to do here? Do I want to numb out? Or do I want to focus on other things? Or can I settle in to the void? Can I lean into it? Can I get curious about how this feels and that maybe I don't like it all that much, but can I sit in it? And this is where our attachment or the shadow of addiction moves into the gift of invention, this higher expression of the shadow, because it's in the gap, it's in the void, it's in the silence where possibility and newness and spark and invention can come in. So when we lean into this void, something can happen that's sometimes called a Gestalt shift. And Gestalt was a pioneer in psychology field. And what it is it's like we suddenly have a perspective shift. Suddenly, life looks different. Suddenly I see my overwhelm, and I start to see how it's keeping me stuck in the pattern. Or I start to notice a different shift in my body and how my body feels when I have the overwhelm. It's perhaps not as consuming, because I've leaned into the silence, into the gap, into the void, and perhaps it starts to become more like, oh, I can feel it in my body, right? I notice it. It's like, oh, there's the overwhelm. And then maybe instead of, because there I am leaning into it, right? Instead of distracting myself from it, as I'm leaning into it, maybe then I take a breath. And then I notice something, and the overwhelm shifts slightly. And then maybe my thoughts about the overwhelm shift slightly. And this place, right, in that silence, that's where we change our attachments. That's where our attachments have the opportunity to shift into the void, which is where possibility, invention, and creativity exist. So the gap, the void, it can be incredibly uncomfortable. It's not a nice place. Human beings, we're not taught how to be in that place, right? Our systems, our families, the ways that we protect ourselves from our own pains and traumas, we are conditioned to not be in silence. We are conditioned to continue our mind thinking and thinking and thinking, those fast neural pathways, those superhighways. When we go into the gap, we see the choice between the superhighway and a new pathway that we want to take. We go, I don't like this route anymore. This superhighway takes me on this weird loop that I don't actually like. I wonder where this path will go, right? That's what the void offers us. And we need to know how to support ourselves in the gap, right? Because it is really uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for our nervous systems. Our nervous systems go, what is going on here? I don't know what's happening here. What do I do here? We normally just keep going down this loop of this superhighway. What are you doing stopping, right? And so this is where it takes a certain intention, first of all, of wanting to notice when the gap happens and wanting to notice your attachments to ways of being, beliefs, emotions. So it takes an intention first to want to notice it. And then it takes a support. Number two, it takes this, what am I going to do when I notice it? Having a bit of another intention, a plan around what you're going to do when you notice it. You don't have to have a plan, but what I find is that having a plan or having an intention can be super supportive to us. And so what I'd like to offer you is super simple. And most of these tools are really simple. And I think this is part of the attachment of the human mind that a lot of us have, is that we often look for complicated solutions. We think that there's going to be some big aha, or there's this complicated solution to how I deal with a struggle that I'm having internally in my life. And our nervous system, because the nervous system is always asking us, am I safe or not? And so at any time that we are shifting through our shadow into the gift, we're integrating our shadow into the gift, we need to take our body with us, right? We're not just our minds, we're not just our spirits. We need to support our physical body so that it feels safe, our nervous system feels safe to actually integrate this newness into us, this new way of being that we want. So we first create the intention to notice our attachments. Number two, we figure out a way to support our nervous system so that it feels safe. And so I just want to offer you this, and you're probably going to see me offer this a lot in my videos, is you're going to put one hand on your heart, and you're going to connect to your heart, to the resonance of your heart, and you're going to put one hand on your stomach, on your solar plexus. And you can keep your eyes open, finding something nice to look at, like a plant or a flower or out the window. Or you can close your eyes and you're going to take a breath. Inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the mouth. And what that does, the connection, the touching, the body tells your nervous system, we must be okay. Because if you're not safe in the nervous system's language, it's going, you're running away from a tiger, right? Because the nervous system is very ancient and that's how it works. It's like if you're running away from a tiger, your arms are pumping or you're getting a stick or something to fight the tiger, right? You're not putting your hand on your heart and on your solar plexus, which are all linked to the vagus nerve. You're not putting your hand there if you're running away. from a tiger. So the nervous system goes, oh, we must be okay. You're putting your hands on our body. Okay. So then the nervous system goes, oh, maybe we're actually okay. Maybe we're actually safe. And then you're finding either a pleasant object to look at, or you're closing your eyes. And what that does is the nervous system uses our eyes as well to know whether we are safe or not. If we're closing our eyes and our hands are on our body, or we're looking at a beautiful plant or out the window at a bird or something, the nervous system goes, oh, we're not freaking out like she's got her eyes closed or she's just focused on this one thing. Maybe we are safe, right? It goes, okay, maybe there's another signal. That's the language we're using to the nervous system. And then we're taking a nice big deep belly breath. We're breathing right into our body. Now, if you're running from a tiger, you are not taking big deep breaths. You are taking very shallow, very quick breaths. So these 3 ways are saying to the nervous system, we are safe. We're actually safe. In this gap, we are safe. In this void, we are safe. And that makes that gap or that void just a little bit bigger. And then maybe you can take another breath there. And then maybe another. And then, instead of going down this superhighway of overwhelm, which I used to do all the time, I can now see, oh, overwhelm signifying to me that I need a break, that I need to take care of myself, that I maybe need to just go outside and take a big breath of fresh air, right? Or it's signifying something else, and then that big breath of fresh air, which is the gap, is going, and then I get another idea and another idea, right? So it shifts us away from the incessant loop of attachment or addiction, and then we go into this beautiful gap that happens spontaneously. We just need to have the intention to know, the intention to recognize it when it happens. And then we create a bigger gap in that place by supporting our physical body to know that it's safe to be in that gap. And then we see what happens. And that's where the magic lies. And this is the gene key or the gate that is active right now. It went into, the sun went into it today on April 28th. And it will be there for, I can't remember the exact date, but 5 or 6 days. And that's going to be the energy is can you notice when you are in an addiction or attachment? And can you notice the gap during this time? And can you be curious to see what it's like to just lean into that void space, into that gap? So I really hope that was helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon.